Hello everybody, this is about Tonystyle here, and today I'll be going over rotating your defensive cooldowns as an enhancement shaman. And now, regardless of the fact that I am going to be focusing on Turbo Cleave with a Resto Druid healer throughout the entirety of this video, the issues that I bring up will be something that will help you regardless of what comp you play, because in general, the overlying theme of playing Enhancement Shaman and doing it well is to not overlap cooldowns, which will be addressed many times throughout this video, but just something to keep in mind that I will be taking my other teammates' defensive cooldowns into consideration when it comes to how I use my own defensives. So let's review all the defenses that we're going to be working with a Resto Druid Turbo Cleave in particular. From the Enhancement Shaman, we have Shamanistic Rage, Ascendance plus Ancestral Guidance, and Draenor Racial. From the Resto Druid, we have Cenarian Ward if there's spec into that. We have Nature's Swiftness, and we have Swiftmin, which is really good at the Soul of the Forest. If not, we're going to be looking for those Treants to help us during that time of need. From the Warrior, we have Safeguard or Vigilance, and we have Last Stand. So they don't offer quite as much as the Resto Druid, obviously, but when you take all this together, we have a lot of defenses that we need to be able to work around successfully to make sure that we are able to stay as offensive as possible, while at the same time not falling to the enemy team's CC/burst rotations. The comp that's going to put you to the test the most is going to be God comp. That will be the test as to whether you can survive the burst and CC rotations, because it's going to be high burst, but not as much CC as you would expect from other comps like an RMD or something like that. So this is going to be the very first setup of the game, one that you want to make sure that is the most important to not use too many cooldowns, because the other team is of course going to have all their stuff up. So what they do is use the Deep Sheep on my Druid with my Warrior unable to assist, and I, of course, don't able to assist as well due to being silenced. Now, because of the fact that the damage is going to be so huge, because it's their first setup, everything's going to come into line, and they're going to have everything at their disposal, I decided to Trinket and Sham Rage and Draenor. Now, the reason that I Sham Rage instantly, even though I just got out of a silence, was because of the fact that, just like when you're silenced, you can't Sham Rage when you're horrified. So, if we were put into a silence Horrify combo, it's going to be very, very deadly if you don't Sham Rage throughout the entire 8 seconds or so. Even if you Trinket about halfway through, it's still going to be very, very scary. Now that I've survived the mage portion of the CC chain, I'm of course going to be worried about the Shadow Priest Fear. So the one thing you want to make sure that you are in range of the Resto Druid whenever he's getting feared. So that's why I'm running over to him, get him out of the Tremor. So to summarize, what we had to use here was Sham Rage, Trinket, and Draenor Racial. So of course, due to this, we're going to have to expect my Resto Druid to Trinket if they lock me down really well next CC chain. Due to the fact that in addition to not having my Trinket, I will most likely not have my Sham Rage as well. So this will show you the importance of stopping at least one CC chain out of every 2 or 3, so that you're able to get either your Trinket or your Resto Druid's Trinket off cooldown. Now it might look bad due to the fact that we use my Trinket as a 2-minute cooldown, Sham Rage was a minute cooldown on something that the God comp can do every 30 seconds or so. So obviously it seems like we're going to have a situation where I don't have Sham Rage and Trinket, and my Resto Druid doesn't have Trinket as well. But a lot of times what you'll find is that if you guys are communicating whenever you need to stop CC and predicting it ahead of time, you can look for opportunities to thwart their CC chain. So what you'll see here is that I get horrified, and the mage deeps my Druid, and he goes for the sheep, my Warrior pummels it, and then he goes for the ring, and my Warrior charges it. So this effectively gives us an extra 30 seconds of breathing room for my cooldowns to come up. So as you can see, by the time the next 30 seconds rolls around, I'm going to have Sham Rage and Trinket both back off cooldown, and we'll be in a very prime spot to stay super offensive and take it to this God comp to make it even harder for them to set up, because that's another benefit of rotating defense as well, is that once you get these defensives coming off cooldown, you're able to play more defenses, which in turn makes it harder for them to set up correctly, because they feel pressured to make a setup that, like for instance in this case, where they aren't able to pull it off correctly. And now just because you stop CC does not necessarily mean that you can save all your defensive cooldowns and that's the best way to play, because what can happen is that if you don't pop a cooldown to counter a cooldown, so say a Feral Incarn or a Boomkin Incarn, their damage is going to be tremendous even if your healer isn't in CC. So if you don't Sham Rage or use any other defensive cooldown, when he pops that and he gets you to say 50% or lower, what's likely to happen is that you might Sham Rage out of fear of dying, and likewise your Druid might Ironbark you at the same time. So obviously this is a huge mistake, because 9 times out of 10 that's not necessary for both of them to happen, and what's likely to happen at that point is that your Resto Druid will get swapped to, or you will get killed in the next setup. So for example, this is of course a mage boomkin like I was talking about, so I'm looking for that Incarn, and what you'll see is that my Druid gets deeped. I'm able to stop the ring with a shear, because they haven't put anything on me just yet, and then he goes for the poly, and I'm able to successfully ground it. Now, of course, this is going to mean that my Resto Druid is going to be able to shapeshift out of the next poly, and when I get hodged here, I of course am going to expect my Druid, since he's not in CC, to be able to get me out of this. So at this point, I'm feeling really, really confident that not many cooldowns will have to be used. The only thing that we're going to be using here is that the Druid calls that he's going to Iron Bark me. So with this, it's definitely a preemptive measure. You can see I'm at like 95% HP, but the damage can be very, very high. So we're going to proactively defend and pop a defensive cooldown to make sure that we don't overuse defensive cooldowns here. Now the general rule of thumb when it comes to using cooldowns is if the enemy team sets up their CC correctly, you're going to want to use Sham Rage first. Sham Rage is you're going to be your first line defense, assuming they're on you, of course, as Enhancement Shaman, which 9 out of 10 times when playing Turbo Cleave or just about any other team for Enhancement Shaman is going to be the case. So with that in mind, Sham Rage is going to be your first line of defense because this is a short cooldown, relatively short cooldown at a minute. And the reason why you want to use your cooldowns first as opposed to your Resto Druids is due to the fact that Iron Bark, unlike Sham Rage, can be used on you as Enhancement Shaman if you need it, or the Resto Druid. So if the enemy team does a great setup on you and you Sham Rage, then if the Resto Druid gets targeted later, he gets Iron Barked. But if he Iron Barks you and you don't Sham Rage, then the enemy team can swap to the Resto Druid and all he's got is his skin as opposed to skin and Iron Bark. And obviously your Sham Rage being off cooldown won't help him in the least. So in this situation, what you'll see happen is that my Resto Druid gets deeped, and the mage is, as you can see, is behind a pillar in a great spot. He has a great position here. My Resto Druid is way too far for me to grounding, and my Sphere is off cooldown, so I'm able to stop this. And outside that, I get hodged. Now at this point, I don't even have to ask my Druid. I'm going to Sham Rage instantly. This is something that you can't really rely on your Resto Druid to call out, because by the time he does, it's going to be too late, especially against a mage or a boomkin, because of the fact that Ice Nova and Star Surge are going to be instant. So if you take full Ice Nova damage, especially if he's got 2 up, then you're going to take way too much damage, and once again you're going to start overlapping cooldowns. So at this point my warrior calls that he's going to just pop a fear due to the fact that he has all 3 of the enemies within his range, and so at this point I just use Draenor, and we should feel pretty confident at this point of being able to get out without using anything else. So this is one of those situations where, when it comes to the fear, obviously it's not that reliable. So this was technically a little bit overlapped due to the fact that Draenor wasn't necessarily needed. But at the same time, it's definitely nice to be able to get out without having to use my trinket or my Resto Druid's trinket. So that's the general rule of thumb. As long as you guys aren't using trinkets, then y'all are going to end up in a great spot due to the fact that the Enhancement Shaman can off-heal. Now the last defensive that I haven't really mentioned is going to be Ascendance plus Ancestral Guidance. Now you use these in tandem due to the fact that the Ascendance damage that you're going to be able to do is a lot higher than normal damage, of course, so the Ancestral Guidance healing is going to be a lot more worthwhile. Now, of course, you have to be doing damage to get the use of Ancestral Guidance, so the point of using it effectively, or the way to use it effectively, is to make sure that you're in a time when you're actually able to do the most damage. Now, the time that you're able to do the most damage is going to be after the big CC/damage rotation has come in. So when you're fighting Holy Poly God comp, like you saw before, outside of the Hodge, or if you're fighting a Rogue comp, is of course going to be after that Kidney or the Dance cheap shots. So with that in mind, outside that is when the best time is to use your Ascendance to make sure that you are getting the most out of that, the most damage, and the most healing at the same time. So now let's take a look at a very typical RMD setup. What you'll see here is that my warrior gets cheap shot, I get cheap shot, my druid gets deeped. Now, of course, this is going to be a very unstoppable ring unless we pop a trinket. So with that in mind, I'm going to instantly Sham Rage here and stop all the incoming ambushes for a high amount of damage and prevent the, as you see, Garrote here from preventing me from Sham Raging. So this early Sham Rage is going to pay off in dividends, even though the damage I'm taking is just insane here. Now, due to the fact that now that I've gotten stunned, I'm going to be on DR for further stuns. This means that I'm going to be able to Ascendance and just do the most amount of damage that I would be able to do. So this will allow me to not only heal for more, due to the fact that Ancestral Guidance is healing me, but also due to the fact that the Ascendance is ranged, I'm going to get a large amount of stacks compared to what I would be if I was just in melee form, because of course the Druid is going to try to be out of range for the most part, so that I will be able to get a lot more stacks, which means even more healing during the time of the most need. And on top of that, as if that wasn't enough reason why Ascendance is so strong here, especially now that we're going on the Resto Druid, this means that follow-up clones are not even an option due to the fact that he's under so much pressure, he can't even get any out. Alright guys, that does it for my guide on using your defensive cooldowns and rotating them well. Hope you enjoyed it and learned a few things as well, and I will see you next time.